Welcome to the Soul Story Show, where real conversations and soulful stories help you live and write your next chapter. I'm your host, Brooke-Sidney Harbour, and today we're diving into an entirely new way of learning about entrepreneurship. My guest, Andrew Ackerman, is a seasoned startup investor, mentor, and educator who's helped countless founders navigate the twists and turns of building a business. His latest book, The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, a novel approach to startup success, blends the wisdom of years in the startup trenches with the storytelling power of fiction, creating a learning experience that's as inspiring as it is practical. Whether you're launching your very first idea or scaling towards your next big milestone, today's conversation will give you the tools, mindset, and inspiration to see your entrepreneurial journey as the epic odyssey it truly is. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. I heard the intro and I'm like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And I'm like, oh wait, she's talking about me.
That's right. We're gonna have a great conversation and some fun with all things entrepreneurship and business. So, you've spent years in the startup ecosystem as an investor and a mentor. What inspired you to teach business lessons through a novel instead of a traditional nonfiction approach?
Sure. I just want to say I've been on all sides of the table. I did two startups before I got sucked into angel investing.
Mm,
So there's three reasons people write books. One is like they just have to tell the story.
right.
The other is they want to promote themselves, and the third is they expect to make a lot of money. I guess it was a blend of all three, right? So like I said, I did two startups. I made a lot of mistakes. The only thing I can say about my mistakes is none of them were big enough to kill the company.
Mm,
So that's your number one. That's your number one goal with the startup. Don't kill the company. And then over the years, as I started investing, as I started running accelerator programs and investing kind of more at scale, I kept trying to work with entrepreneurs to help guide them. And what I realized is, as I was helping them guide to the right decisions, the lessons that stuck were the ones that were stories about other startups. It wasn't just like, hey, you got to do A, B, and C. It was like, well, this is one startup. They did this, and here's how they figured it out, and here's how they solved that problem. And those stuck better with the people I was trying to mentor. So as this is like percolating in the back of my mind, I remembered a book that I'd read in business school. It's actually the only book I remember from business school. It's called The Goal. And the reason it was so memorable was, though it was used as a textbook for strategy and operations, it was written like a novel. So it was a story about a guy who had to turn around this printing plant, didn't know what to do, and he had an advisor come and help him through it. And while it wasn't great writing, it was incredibly memorable because stories help us learn, help us remember, help us identify with problems. So then it all clicked. I said, well, if that's how my mentor, my mentees are kind of getting it, and this is how to tell a story that's memorable, I'm just going to put it all together in the form of a novel, and let's see what happens.
I love that. That's true. We definitely remember business points or really anything with the power of story. So, your title uses the word odyssey. What parallels do you see between the hero's journey and the entrepreneurial path?
That's a great question because I've never been asked that before. It sort of came up when I had an original title for the book. It turns out that somebody I really respect from the startup world already used that, and not only used it, used it for a sequel too. So
Mm,
as I was talking to my publisher, they said, "Well, it's about entrepreneurship. It's about startups. Maybe you should use those words in the title." I'm like, duh, okay, that was smart. I should have done that from the beginning. But I am a huge fan of the Odyssey. So I guess the number one parallel is Odysseus is always referred to as the trickster, right? The tricker, the wily Odysseus. A lot of the things he does are ways to kind of hack his way to a solution, right? So he wanted to hear the sirens sweetly singing, but he knew that if he did, he'd throw himself overboard and die. So he has his entire boat. Everyone else plugs their ears, but he gets to be tied to a mast and he can listen to it, but he can't get free. So that's how he kind of hacks his way to a solution there. And while it wasn't really very fair to everyone else on the boat, at least it worked for him. So in the startup world, and if you look, sorry, it's not on the screen, but if you look down here, like it's a picture of the guy and he's got a chainsaw. He's literally hacking his way through the maze.
Mhm.
And most startup founders share that. Oh, I was told I can't do it. There's no easy way through it. They don't just turn around and go home.
Right.
They're always thinking, well, it's a wall. Do I go over it, under it, around it, or through it? So they have that same kind of resourcefulness, that same kind of appropriate trickiness.
I love that. And I think it's also helpful too, Odyssey, when we think about the hero's journey, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to go through all those different trials and different things. But it's so nice to think of yourself as kind of the hero and that you will win in the end. You can get through this maze somehow when you keep trying. You were writing fiction, right, with a business purpose is super unique. How did you strike the balance between the like engaging story and the actionable startup strategies?
So um, I don't think it's a balance. I think there are two necessary conditions. Right? So there are a lot of books out there that at least claim to be really good startup advice, and they're like deathly boring. Like business books, and I have a confession to make. I don't actually like them. Right? I have to read them. It's an occupational hazard. But even the good ones all sound like that. This same guy from Indiana ghostwriting it, and the same boring like anecdote, name drop, and
Right,
then like half page summary at the end of the chapter. Well, guess what? If you ripped out all those pages at the end of the chapter and just stapled them together, you'd have an awesome 25-page book. I have no patience for it, even the good ones. So I wasn't going to do that. Like, I'm not going to write stuff that I would be too bored to read.
that's good.
So, it had to be the right advice, which I thought, after mentoring thousands of startups and investing in over 70 of them, maybe it's hubris to go back to ancient Greek. Maybe it's hubris to think that I've got something good to share, but at least I felt like I had that checked. So then the real challenge was, okay, it's got to be a story. It's
Right,
got to be engaging. How do I make this something other than, you know, two people looking down at a pitch deck on the monitor at a WeWork, conference room?
right. So, given that you were able to achieve this balance and make it very interesting and a lot easier read than I would say most of our business books out there, was there a scene or chapter that was particularly challenging to write? And was that from like an emotional or from a craft perspective?
Oh, okay. So from an emotional perspective, no problem, right? I mean, there's nothing like it's not like I lost my childhood dog when I was 8, and there was a scene there. It was a tearjerker. So if you're looking for that, like, okay, maybe not this book for you. It's fine. It's lighthearted. One of the funny challenges that came up is like when I'm writing it. I don't want it to be, you know, I wanted the tone to be real. So we curse a lot in the startup world. So I was very creative with all my curses. And then when I'd always thought like maybe it would also be a textbook. And when I had the chance to use it, the draft of it first, and now the real book as a textbook in the course I teach, uh, it occurred to me I had to take all the curse words out.
Mm,
And I was really creative. So I had to go through line by line to find every variation on an F bomb or anything else I put in there to pull out. So that was a little annoying. But the three challenges, I had basically three challenges when I sat down to write this. So challenge number one was I'd written a lot of articles, a lot of articles that have been published, but they were all 500 to 800 words long because
mm,
people don't really have patience for more than that. So could I actually write 200 plus pages and not just all stretcher filler material? Could I actually write a good 200 plus pages where every page was as valuable as the others? Okay, couldn't do that without learning. That's as I tell my startups, that's your single irreducible risk.
right, right.
Number two, all my articles are first person. They're all my voice, right? And people seem to like it, but like in a novel, not everyone sounds the same.
That's right. Yeah.
So I had to figure out a way to make the different characters sound differently. And actually, the hack that I came across was for every one of the main characters, I have somebody very concrete in mind that I know. So whenever I wanted to have that character speak, I put the words in his or her mouth. So, for example, the founder is, I can say now, I didn't tell him until I saw him, I could tell him personally, is a guy named Kofi Kankan. He had an ed tech startup that I backed, and he had just the right blend of a well reasoned but loosely held opinion. Like he was unflappable. You asked him a question, this is why he's doing it. You would show him like data or other potential contrary opinions. You're like, okay, well, let's test that and see what happens. And I wanted that. I wanted that attitude for the main character Marcus in the book. So I just ran everything through, my imaginary Kofi in my mind, and that's how I wrote it. And that's actually, by the way, if you look really, really closely, not that it makes a difference to the plot at all. Wait, I'll have to hold it right here so we can see it. Right. So Kofi, that's Kofi. Since Kofi happens to be black, the main character is black. Wasn't really a plot point, but I figured if that's who I had in my mind, that's who should be on the cover.
That's fun.
And the third one was just what we talked about before, right? How do I actually make it a narrative? So I sat down in the very beginning. I put my outline together in about 20 minutes, and then I just kind of brainstormed chapter by chapter. Like, how can I talk about market size? That's not just a lecture.
Mm,
So I actually ended up, Kofi and his son are actually on the subway on the way to school. And his son, 11, I think he's 11 years old in the book, just says, Dad, if I owned the subway, I'd be rich. And that's what he means. Like, everyone takes the subway. Look how far people go. So Kofi, or in this case, Marcus in the book, says, the same $2.90 that gets us 4 stops to your school could take us all the way to Coney Island. And his son's outraged. He's like, what are you talking about? If you go further, you got to pay more. And that launches into a whole different discussion of all you can eat pricing, pricing by unit, even cost of
right.
savings, share of savings pricing.
No, I love that. And I think it makes it all real, which I think the book achieves through the storytelling, which is super powerful. Many of our listeners are writers themselves. What advice would you give entrepreneurs who want to use storytelling to connect with investors, customers, or even their team?
Okay. Thank you for asking that and not the question I thought you were going to ask. I thought you were going to ask me to give advice to other writers. And I'm like, don't take my advice. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a horrible discipline. You want to know how I wrote the book? I
Yes.
I wrote the book um, standing in the corner of a subway car, muttering into my phone, speech to text directly into Google Docs.
That's perfect. I have a lot of my clients, I tell my clients to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, it works really well
It
for like
works.
a 500-word article, but like when you're trying to get together a 200 plus page narrative arc, maybe not the wisest way to do it. So anyway, I'm not giving advice to professional writers. It's not my area of expertise. But I will give advice to founders
Right.
about using narrative. So you have to remember that when you're telling the story of your startup, it is a story and it's a narrative arc. And there's a lot of different ways to tell it. So sometimes the founder actually has a personal connection to the problem.
Mhm.
So that should be part of the genesis story. Like, for example, there's a founder who was in the middle of his PhD program, MD PhD program, and he was taking his mother to get a radiology scan because she had breast cancer. Sorry, not a scan, oncology. They were actually irritating her. So he's like passing the time. He's talking to the oncologist and says, "Well, how do you know, radiologist? How do you know how much radiation to put into her at what angles? Because they'll overlap the two beams so that the actual cancer gets a lethal dose, but the
Mm.
other healthy tissue doesn't." So the doctor says, "Well, it's kind of more of an art than a science." And like the guy's blood ran cold because like that's his mom, right? That's not the
Right.
answer he wanted to hear. And that's how he ended up starting the startup that he did. So if you have that kind of personal connection that can tell the investor, hey, I'm in this for the long haul, right? I'm a missionary, not a mercenary.
Mm.
Put it in there. But on the flip side, maybe it's just an idea that came to you while you were having dinner, and like, well, who cares, right? So just get to like the dramatic part. In your case, the dramatic part is here's this huge, juicy, painful problem, and
Right.
it's sitting out there, and guess what? It just became solvable, right? So get right to that plot point instead of a genesis story. So at the end of the day, you have to think of it as a story. But like all stories, you can tell different stories different ways.
I love that. I think that's incredibly helpful for the people that are out there, both trying to write a book, as well as the ones that are trying to use storytelling in maybe their pitch deck or so forth. So, from your perspective, what are the top 2 to 3 traits that most influence whether a founder succeeds or fails?
Oh, so I'll take a look at it from my perspective, and I'll tell you this is actually what goes on the team slide. Right, so I tell people your team slide isn't just who you are; it's why you are going to win at this. Why are you perfect for this
Mm.
startup at this time? So let's start with general characteristics, and then we'll work our way in. The number one thing I like to see is prior entrepreneurial endeavors. Right? Ideally, an exit.
Right.
If not an exit, a startup that went pretty well. You learned a lot using somebody else's money. That's better than learning a lot on my money. But even down to like non-tech startup stuff. Like I interviewed a guy for a slot in the accelerator program I used to run at Dream It. And I asked him, what's your first entrepreneurial experience? He says, well, when I was in fifth grade, I noticed that all of my buddies, and they were the guys, not the girls in the class, all my buddies kept forgetting their pencils. So I bought a case of pencils and I rented them out for 5 cents a day. Didn't sell them, he just rented them for 5 cents a day. So when he was done, I turned to my partner in the accelerator. Like, I don't really like what he's doing now, but I'm going to back him in something. Like this is the kind of founder I want to back. That's number one. Like, show me you've got the startup hustle, either because you did it before, ideally successfully, or you've done other things like that. So that's what I really want to see. And then, depending on what your startup is, explain to me how you're the person with the expertise to make that happen. And that could be, a decade of experience in the industry. That could be rare technical knowledge that other people don't have. Right? That's what I want to see. That's what I mean. It's not just who, it's why you're going to succeed at this, and somebody else with the same plan would just fail miserably.
Oh, I love that. That's really helpful advice. And I know you mentioned hustle. So the startups often operate at lightning speed. How do you think founders can balance urgency with thoughtful strategic decision making?
Whew, your mileage may vary. It really depends. And I've seen a lot of styles within the startup world. Ironically, or maybe not so ironically, the more experienced founders, they work really hard, but somehow they feel a lot less frantic about it. So, what I would say very carefully is like, understand what actually is important for you to work on or might be important, number one.
Right.
Number two, if you're not sure which way to go, if you're not sure something's important, construct a very easy, cheap, fast experiment to
Mm.
decide, is this important? Is it not important? Do I have to worry about it or not? And then be laser focused on those things. So number three, other stuff that's not the right thing, just don't do it, or do it to the minimalist way. So I'll give you an example. First one's a joke. How's that? Jokes are okay, right? I guarantee
Mhm.
you, it's the only PG joke I know. So there's an old guy in the middle of the street at night looking down. And his friend happens to find him. So he says, hey, what are you doing in the middle of the street looking down on the ground in the middle of the night? And so I lost $20. So I'll help you look for it. So he's like, hey, look around. Like, it's the middle of the street, not a lot of places for $20 to be hiding. So after about 30 seconds, like, I don't see it. Where exactly did you lose the money? So the first guy goes, down that alley. So the second is, well, if you lost it down the alley, what are we doing in the middle of the street? The light's better here. So a lot of startups fall into that trap.
Mhm.
Sorry, someone in the audience will laugh at that joke.
No,
Maybe
that's true.
but they, a lot of the startups retreat to what they're good at. So if it's a strong technical team, they want to build stuff, right? They want to build more features. But maybe the most important thing they need to test is how cost effectively they can get customers,
Right.
right? And that's not their strength. They're not comfortable with it. So instead, they're just going to build stuff. They're looking in the middle of the street rather than going down the scary alley, but they have to do that because that's where the money is. So that brings me back to the second point. So how do you test things?
Right.
So let's say you have an e-commerce store, right? It's a business model we all know. Like, I'm selling pens, I put them online. I need to be able to sell pens at more than it costs me to make and bring people to my site. So okay, my super pens are great. How do I? Maybe I'm going to advertise them on Facebook or Google or what have you. So I should be able to create an Excel model or Google Sheets where I can model, okay, if it costs me this much money for every click I get, and this percentage of the people who click to my site buy, and on average they pay this much, I should be able to tell how much I can afford to pay for a click relative to how much I'm charging for a pack of pens, and decide, am I going to make money or not?
Right.
Now, a lot of it's very simple the way I make it sound, I know, but a lot of the startups, like, they do that, they create their model, and then they're like, I need money. And when I talk to them, like, well, you have an advertising strategy. Did you put down maybe $100 on Google AdWords just to see what your click cost per click would be? Like, oh, I never thought about that. And I'm like, well, you're asking me for a lot of money. For $100, you could tell me whether or not your startup, you know, maybe your assumptions are good. So that's what I mean about,
Wow.
construct simple, quick, cheap, or even free tests, and then you just execute on them. And that's a way to make sure that you'll work hard, but you're doing what needs to be done, rather than doing a whole bunch of things hoping that you've actually hit on the important stuff.
That's true. Really looking at the numbers too and not just staying, I feel like, in the fancy of the idea. Um, we have so many things now that are affecting business, but probably AI is one of the largest and historical developments, I think, that's rapidly shaping industries. How do you see emerging AI developments from like product creation to customer service impacting the startup landscape?
Sure. So this goes back, I think I mentioned it briefly. One of the overarching questions and the things that I'm really excited about is the why now, right?
Hmm.
Big, juicy problem, and only now can we deal with it. If I can't find a why now, that means that there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of startups that have tried it before. And they're either further ahead than the startup I'm looking at now, or they've all failed because there's something flawed about the idea or the market. So I need to find a why now. And AI is the why now of right now. Now, there are others, right? We've seen
Right.
this movie before. The first time we saw it recently, or not the first time goes way back, but
Mhm.
we've seen it with blockchain. We've seen it
Right.
with natural language processing, which is part of AI when you think about it. We've seen it with speech recognition. We've seen it with, video recognition. Like, all these things hit, either they didn't exist before at all, or they hit this tipping point, an inflection point, where it went from being something that you needed a lot of, like, very specialized researchers and a lot of money to make happen, to
Right.
now you can almost pull it off the shelf for free or for very little. When that happens, it opens the floodgates to a lot of things you couldn't do before. And that's the exciting time for us in VC. So, the number one caution I would give a founder is make sure you have a why now. By the way,
Mm.
they're not just technical. Why nows could be regulatory, right? The regulations change now.
Right.
We need it. There are other ways, but it has to be something kind of dramatic and change. It's not a gradual thing. So, number one, have a why now. Uh, Number two, make sure you're using it right. I can't tell you how many people pitch, oh, we're using AI. And I'm like, I don't think so. That looks like a SQL query to me. But they sprinkle it like fairy dust on their deck because that's what they think an investor needs to see. But newsflash, I don't need to see that. I just need to see that this is an awesome idea, and you're doing things that are like different and better, quantum level better than someone else. So if you're not using AI for it, that's okay. There are other businesses out there. Now, that said, though, you should be using, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with AI, almost touching every part of your business. So, you know,
That's true. I mean, there are predictions that you might now see the first billion-dollar company that had only one person, right, using AI. Do you think AI is going to level the playing field for new founders or raise the stakes even higher?
oh, so both. By the way, I will say you might find a single employee $1 billion company, but my money's on the minimum being two.
Okay.
And the reason is, lots of things sound great up here, but when you have to say it out loud to somebody across the table who's your peer, all of a sudden you realize, I didn't really think that through that well, or they call BS on you. So
Right.
maybe there'll be a two-person $1 billion company. Maybe that's a stretch. Okay, so let's answer the question that you were actually answering, um, which now I'm blanking on. Repeat the question.
No, that's fine. It was actually really interesting because, I've had a gentleman on the show that his book was all about co-founder AI, Clarence Wooten,
Oh,
and his idea as coming from the tech, he's had a couple different exits and so forth, that AI can be actually used as the co-founder for that sort of kind of bouncing things off. Obviously, there's a confirmation bias that can be involved there, but that we're now, with taking away confirmation bias, you can actually use the AI as your co-founder, as that brainstorming partner. I mean, I've seen consulting, thousands of dollars consulting prompts to help. So I was just curious.
No, actually, I don't remember the question, so I'll get back to that. That's really interesting. Could your AI companion rise to the level of a co-founder? So I've actually seen within the past 2 weeks somebody pitch an AI tool specifically around coaching solo entrepreneurs, a little bit more in the traditional world. I've started a clothing business or what have you, and I think it can very much do that. I think you have to be the right kind of solo entrepreneur to take the advice back from your AI and actually like appreciate it, and not maybe dismiss it as like, yeah, it's all glitchy. But I have to think about that one.
Yeah.
But to go back to the prior question, is it going to level the playing field and make things easier? Is it going to raise the bar? It's
Right.
absolutely going to do both. And we've seen this happen. So when I did my first startup a long, long time ago, uh, it, well, a little before I did my first startup, you were at a point where you didn't have server farms, right? So if you needed a server to actually run your business, it was in a room somewhere in your office. Right? And then we got server farms, so you could go down to like large hosting places. They would keep the thing at a chilly 55 degrees. I know, I've been in there, and you'd rack your servers there, and at least there
Mhm.
you knew it was backup power. During the blackout in 2003, my first startup's website never went down. Like, I didn't know that because I didn't have any power to check it, but it was good. And I remember going in there to install new servers with the CTO, and us looking at all the wires and saying, we really should have labeled those wires. We don't know what's safe to unplug right now when we put the new server on the rack. But that was step number two. Step number three, now Amazon Web Services, AWS, that's all hosted in the cloud. You don't even need your own servers. You're just buying compute. And then along the way, you have the rise of different APIs. So you didn't have to program everything from scratch. You just plug into someone else. GitHub, so repositories of
Mhm.
code that are hopefully reusable with a little bit of tweaking. And I got vibe coding or
Vibe
AI
coding,
assisted
right.
coding. So all these things have made the cost of creating a startup come down dramatically from like $5 million just to get started to 500,000 to 50,000 to 5,000 or zero even. So in that regard, it's awesome for the entrepreneur. The flip side is now we have so many more startups coming up that we see as investors that we're raising the bar on how much we want to see. Like
Mhm.
before, hey, you need $5 million to set up a server room. Okay, you can come with me with just a business plan or just a pitch deck. Now I'm like, you have all these other tools. Like, I think you could probably get to revenue before you even talk to me, depending on the startup. So it will become a lot easier to do. And in the same way, the bar will be raised on the things that matter.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of my inkling. So, your book's novel format suggests that stories make lessons stick. What's one lesson from the entrepreneur's Odyssey that you hope readers carry with them?
Well, I mean, all of them, but that's kind of a weasel answer, isn't it? Kind of a weasel answer. Okay, so your startup is a chain; it's not a rope. Right? We talk the VC main character, the angel investor, is the main character here. Jason uses this analogy, and the important part about it is like a rope, like a strand or two can fray, and the rope is still strong. You can still use it. But with a chain, if one link is broken, the chain is useless. Right? A single weak link ruins the chain. So, what I want the startups, the entrepreneurs out there to think about when they're talking about their own startup is, are all of the links of my chain strong enough to bear the weight? Right? It's not, again, go down the alley, right? I have to fix every link. It has to work, or else it just doesn't work for me. So that's the big overarching thing that I think startups need to appreciate, or founders need to appreciate.
I love that. Okay, so working with so many entrepreneurs and now writing this book, how has your own definition of success evolved?
Ooh, it's a good question. So my definition of success for startups is still the same, right? I got 3 kids in school. You got to pay for college, and I would like to have a decent retirement. So my definition of success for my investments is still very, very financial. For myself, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the process of making and marketing the book is I've got to play around with AI tools that I never would have played around with, in my investing side. So, in my investing side, I may use AI to help me do competitive research, come up, where are all the competitors for this startup? I might even use it to do a first draft of my memo, an investment memo, maybe even extract stuff from a horribly written pitch deck that I just can't make my own way through, right? Maybe.
Right.
For the marketing of the book, I actually experimented with the vibe coding for the first time
Hmm.
because I wanted to parse all the emails that I'd sent to come up with different approaches for different contexts of mine. And the only way to do that was to go through the emails and, dedupe them, figure out who I'd been in touch with. Did I talk to the book about them? Did I not talk to them about the book? And I actually went through 3 different programs to make that actually work.
Oh, wow.
Um, and the same thing, we talked about this actually a little before the show, just for fun. I came up with some videos about the book, actually, illustrating in video format what it is to get lost in the startup maze. And once we played around with the tools and we figured out how to do it, my interns now, who are awesome, can pull these out in 15 minutes.
Wow.
So these are videos that would have cost $40,000, to shoot in advance. No one would have done them for a book. Now they're doing them I asked my intern Isha, if I have other people that want to do it, would you do it for them? He said yes. So what would you charge? He said, I don't know, I can do it in 15 minutes. I would charge $20. And I say, I forbid you to charge
Right.
$20. You're charging at least $200 for this.
Right.
There's no way I'm letting you get away let them get away with that. But it's there, right? So I've been able to experiment with video Gen AI, and I never would have played with that for my regular job. So in some respects, just the fun and the joy of being able to grow in those directions is part of success for the book.
That's great. What do you hope this book sparks in someone who's been sitting on their big idea but hasn't acted yet?
Oh, awesome question. So the other benefit of writing this like a novel is that unlike a boring how-to manual, it gives the person reading it an idea of what the actual day-to-day life of a founder is like. And it's not like the Steve Jobs biopics, and it's not like the Facebook movie. It's both more interesting and more deathly boring at the same time. And it's stressful in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. So, I'm hoping that for that group of readers who are sitting in a cube or an office in a large corporation and they're living a problem, and I got a way to solve this. I want to go out and do it. They can actually get a feel for not just the how to, but what it feels like to create a startup, and whether or not this is something that's a good fit for them. And if it's not a good fit for them, great, don't do it because it will set you back years. It will set you back a lot of money.
Right.
So you got to be willing to take that risk. And if it's not for you, hey, no is the second best answer, as long as it's a quick no. But for the ones that are I just don't know what it's like, and then oh, I can do that. Right? I'm at the right stage in my life to do that. If it finally gets them out of the cube and they do it, that would be awesome too.
That's really good advice. So the next part of our interview is this really like rapid fire round. And the goal is just for you to share like the first thing that comes to your mind. So what do you think is a morning ritual that sets you up for success?
Coffee,
You say coffee. Yeah,
full
coffee is a
stop.
must have. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happens right after the coffee? But this is a family broadcast, so I'm not going to share that.
Okay. Okay. The book besides your own that every entrepreneur should read.
You mean for? Oh, that's a good question. I would say Mastering the VC Game by Jeff Busgang. It's an older book, but it'll tell you exactly what it's like for guys on my side of the table. Like how do funds run? How do they think? What's important to us? When they're good fits or not? Great book and not deathly boring like all the other books I talked about.
Oh, that's good. One word to describe your entrepreneurial philosophy.
One word. Okay, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to hyphenate two words. Experimentation.
Ooh, that's good. That's really good. I was going to say coffee or tea, but you already gave that one away
Oh,
to all
already
of
did
us.
coffee. Yeah.
So the last one's super fun, but a song that always gets you focused and in the creative zone.
Son of a preacher man.
Oh, that's a really good song. That's
Yeah.
a really good song. Well, Andrew, thank you
I
for
don't know
taking
why.
us. Oh, okay. You said you don't know why?
I have no idea why it does it, but there's something about that. It always it's kind of relaxing and energizing at the same time.
I love that. So, Andrew, thank you for taking us on this journey, both through your book and in today's conversation. The Entrepreneur's Odyssey is such a creative and powerful way to teach startup wisdom, and I know our listeners will be inspired to approach their new ventures with fresh eyes. For those who are ready to start or even reimagine their entrepreneurial adventure, make sure to grab a copy of Andrew's book, and we've included the link in the show notes along with the ways to connect with him directly. I'm Brooke-Sidney Harbour, and this is the Soul Story Show, where real conversations and soulful stories help you live and write your next chapter. Until next time.